Awesome. Welcome to the first ever episode of Life Change TV. I've had this dream for ages to have a Life Change TV where I interview lots of individuals who have really been through things in their life. They've learned the principles of life change and they share them with you, the viewers. So in this very first episode, we're really lucky to have Zoe B. Welcome, Zoe, to the show. Thank you for being our very first guest.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And so, look, you've got a great story. You've got some great things to share. You're one of the authors in New Year's Revolution, and your chapter was an easy guide to making decisions. That's right.
That's right. Yes.
And so, obviously, I've been thinking about this. Easy way to make guide to making decisions. Making decisions can stress us out. You've got a lot to say about stress. So tell us more about you, what you do.
Well, I guess an easy way to explain my passion is that I've always had this belief that we're completely limitless in life and we can achieve anything that we want. And I think for me, life is about loving every single minute and really getting out there and grabbing life with both hands. And my background, actually, going back to what I used to do sort of 12 years ago, is corporate advertising. And when it comes to stress, corporate advertising is pretty much up there in terms of stress, high stress levels. But I pretty much did that for 12 years, and we'll get into the stress side of things in a moment. I worked in global ad agencies in London and Sydney. I then co-founded my own boutique ad agency here in Sydney about 5 years ago called Contagious Agency. And I'm still heavily involved in that, and we work with a lot of big clients like Sony, Unilever, Telstra, Woolworths. But for me, it really got to a point where I wanted to give back, and I've always been addicted to learning. It's something that I've always had this passion for, and I think it got to a point where I really wanted to share what I'd learned, and I'd spent so much time improving myself and studying all these different principles like coaching, NLP, positive psychology, how to use the mind more effectively, and got to a point where I really wanted to just share that with others, and that's what led to me founding my latest business, which is called Simple Life Strategies, and that's where I work with people in a one-on-one coaching capacity, and also with some online programs. But going back to stress, what happened to me about, say, 6 or how many years ago was it now? I'd say it was before I started Contagious, so about 8 years ago perhaps. I was in the thick of the advertising world. And it's funny because and I think I find this in a lot of corporate roles, there's almost this expectation that if you're not stressed, then you're not working hard enough. And stress is almost this badge of honour that you wear around the corporate environment. I don't know if you've come across that as well yourself.
Yep. So it's interesting. I mean, I was in the corporate environment in London. In the sort of digital media scene over there, and so it's interesting what you're saying. It's almost like there's the stress of the job, but then there also seems to be the stress of trying to create the stress because the stress is the badge of honor. So we're looking at stress at multiple different levels here. So let's get back to basics. You and your job in the corporate world, because I know some of our listeners, our viewers, will be able to relate to that. What did stress look like to you in that situation?
Deadlines mainly. In ad world, you pretty much have deadlines every single day. So you're put under a lot of pressure to meet these deadlines. You're dealing with lots of different types of people, with creative people, with people in finances, with clients, with business people. And the expectations are really high, and you have deadlines to meet that, you have to make that deadline, it has to get done. So I think that's probably the key driver for stress, but also, it is that very much that corporate environment and high achievement and just over-delivering for clients, really. And you're dealing with very large sums of money as well for clients, so, there's a lot at stake in terms of reaching those deadlines.
And so how did that stress impact your life, your health, your relationships? How did it outwork itself in your life?
I think for me, I was working, 16, 18-hour days. I wasn't resting at all. I wasn't having lunch breaks. I wasn't getting out of the office. I was literally in the office, either on the computer or in meetings. and there was no break. And after a period of time, that sort of thing really starts to build up, and it does start to negatively impact your health. And whilst I was young and I probably could deal with it a little bit better because I had a lot of energy, I did start to notice that I would get tired quite easily, and I'd start to suffer with various health complaints, and I'd just get burned out, to be honest, and I wouldn't have any time either. So it impacted my social life. I'd be working late, I couldn't go out and meet friends, I'd have to cancel on events that I'd said I'd be at. Partners were being sort of left behind, and it impacted everything.
Yeah. So then what did you do? Was it for you? Did you get to some sort of breaking point where it's like something has to change? Or what was that place and time for you that you basically said, we have to do something different here?
I do remember that moment, actually, and there was nothing specific that happened, but I just had an aha moment internally. And I think I just had a moment of self-awareness where I could see almost outside of myself how stressed I was and how ridiculous this whole situation was, And I kind of thought to myself, this isn't living, Life's not supposed to be like this, or I don't want my life to be like this. And I just said to myself, I just made myself a promise that, you know what, I'm not willing to live a life of stress anymore. This isn't how I want my life to be. So I'm going to take control and I'm going to make some changes. And from that point, I started researching stress. I looked at lots of other different modalities that might help in terms of how I can manage that stress. And then I just tried lots of different things to see what would work for me personally.
So what did work for you? What can you share with our audience who are stressed? And obviously stress is at various levels. It's a corporate world. There's a stress of trying to meet deadlines in terms of paying bills and all that sort of stuff. What techniques can you share? What principles can you share to change people's lives, how they handle stress in their own life?
Yeah.
What's your wisdom, Zoe?
Well, because I got to this point where I did sort of define this process, if you like, what I actually did was turn that into something that I can share with others through my Less Stress course, which is an online course. And I'll just share with you a couple of the steps from that. And the first thing that I would say to people who are struggling with stress is that stress isn't actually what you think it is. Stress doesn't actually exist. Right? So if you think about what stress actually is, it's a thought in your mind that hasn't yet happened. So it's a worry, it's a fear, it's a form of anxiety. And I think it was Earl Nightingale who actually was famous for finding out that 92% of our worries or our stresses don't ever happen. So that's a really big one, once you understand that actually all of these worries that I'm worrying about, all of this stress never materializes in my life, you kind of start to view stress as something that's a little bit ridiculous, It's like we're wasting all of this time worrying about these things that probably aren't going to happen to us. So stress is, you have to go in the future in your mind to experience stress. So the first tip that I would give people is to focus on the current moment. If you are 100% focused on now, on the current moment, then you can't be stressed because you're not in the future. So that's the first thing that I'd say. I
think, just to jump in there, I think it's also kind of relevant to say, the times that I've been stressed, again, it's about thinking about things in the future and that stuff that may or may not materialise in the way that we always make things out to be worse in our heads than what they actually turn out to be. But to go backwards as well and to think about all the things that I stressed about in the past year, and to make that truth that you've just said real, to apply it to your life. Well, to go back and think, well, all the things that I stressed about, what happened? Not much. Yeah. so it's to use that experience as an anchor point to move forward.
Yeah.
As you said, to move forward. So yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you for that. What's next?
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that actually, because in my course, one of the exercises that I get people to do is I get them to list all of their current worries and their stresses, and then in 2 weeks or 4 weeks' time, I get them to set an alarm on their phone and to go back and view that list and tick off how many of those things actually came true. And you know what? You'll be surprised how much of it doesn't happen. So that's a really good visual and kinesthetic way of actually proving to yourself that this is, this theory makes sense. Yeah. I mean, the second thing I would say is take action. So again, let's get out of the head and let's get into the body and actually do something that's going to impact, or that's going to stop whatever you're worrying about from happening. So when we stress, we tend to go into overanalysis, which is where we start looping in the mind. So we start trying to solve a problem, and then we just it's almost like it goes on loop, on repeat, and we keep going over and over and over and over and over the problem, different angles, all these different things, and it gets really overcomplicated. And what this does is it paralyzes us. So there's a wonderful saying that I live by, and it's called analysis is paralysis. So what you've got to do is, you like that? What you've got to do is pull yourself out of that over-analysis when you notice it starts to happen, and actually just choose one thing. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be something really small, but just choose something that you can do right now to take action to help your case. Whatever it is you're worrying about, just take action right now.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's another great.
So instead of just sitting there worrying about it forever, all the energy that we put into that worrying about something that may not happen, what is that one thing that you can do right now in this present moment to eliminate the outcome that you think might happen?
Yeah.
Even though it probably won't. But what can you do now? What action can you take to change that situation? Yeah, that's pretty good. That's good. And so what about, because I know, we get stressed, especially in the corporate world, or whatever demands that we have in terms of time demand and time constraints, and one of the sort of techniques I think would be, to get out, to get space. And when I was stressed, that's what people told me, and yet my response was always, I don't have time. I don't have time to get out and chill out and go and walk in the garden and enjoy the birds and the air. So what would your response be to that? Do we need to get out, Zoe, or what do we do?
Look, everyone has the same amount of time in a day, so I believe it's really important to actually step away, definitely. And there's been a lot of research that shows, from a productivity perspective, taking a break will actually aid your productivity levels. So while it may feel like you don't have the time, what leaving your situation will do is it will re-energize you, and it will put some fuel back in the tank, so that when you go back, you'll actually achieve twice as much as you would have if you just carried on. So even though it might feel like, I'm frazzled, I just can't, I've got so much to do, I've just got to keep going, you're probably unaware that you're not operating at an optimal level of performance because you're so tired, and you're actually going to be better off taking that break, even though it feels like you don't have the time. Even if it's 10 minutes, go out, get some fresh air, get some perspective, come back, you'll feel revitalized, you'll have fresh ideas, and then you can refocus.
And I think for me as well, when I was sort of working through that stress process in my life, I would think about all these deadlines and all the things I had to do, and yet I would be sitting at the computer, and the times that I would still have that same deadline, that same pressure, and yet I would just click on Facebook or click on a link to read me. And in my mind, this is what I decided for myself, that the amount of time that I actually probably spend feeling like I've got a deadline, but actually not working towards it because I'm doing Facebook or whatever. I said, well, maybe that equates to about an hour every day. So if I take that hour and don't do that, and I decided to go to the gym instead, and so the link then, that hour's been, I don't do anything with it anyway, don't convince myself that I do because I don't. So I go in the gym instead, and then that link between the body and the mind in terms of productivity, when you're in the gym and your energy's going, the adrenaline's going, and the creative ways I came in the gym to jump over hurdles and fix problems and create new ideas was actually so much more productive than the hour that I wasted on Facebook.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a really great technique, because what you're doing there is you're actually accessing your subconscious mind. when you're doing something like running on a treadmill. That's why if you think about the history of innovation, people have their most incredible ideas when they're in the shower or they're on a walk, And I just read Steve Jobs' biography, which is a really fascinating read. And he actually was very famous for, he'd take long walks. He wouldn't have meetings sitting down, he'd take walks because it actually activates a different side of your brain that is actually, it's almost like a higher intelligence. It's like your intuitive side.
Yeah, that's really good. And so, obviously you have this course online and you work with people who struggle with stress. Well, aside from the sort of corporate world, what other sort of levels of stress what other triggers of stress that you encounter through clients that you work with on a day-to-day basis?
Look, it's really broad. I think technology has resulted in people struggling with time, and it's almost like there's so many different things pulling at us now every day that people just feel like they don't have any time to do everything that they need to do. So whether you're a mum and you've got lots of kids and you're just struggling trying to manage all of that, or you could be a student, you might be studying, you might be finding it hard to manage everything you need to do there, and then you've got all of your social, your real life social networks, and then your online ones, and there's lots of those. It's like there's a lot of things that people need to manage, and so it's really varied. But time management is quite key, I think. But like I said before, it's really all mental. So, and I found this myself, that if I've got a lot on, it's not actually what I've got on that's stressing me out. It's me worrying about what I've got on that then drains my energy. So if I just put that to one side and believe that I can get all of this done and just get on with it, then it's not actually that bad. It's just that whole, how am I going to do this? I've not got enough time. Where do I start? It's all of that negative thinking that drains us of our energy, and then we can't get it done because we've got no energy left because we've overthought it.
And that link is becoming more and more clear in terms of studies with regards to that stress and health, the negative impact of health. So I'm interested to know, what are the signs? If somebody's thinking, I feel unwell, I am a bit busy, but what's the crossover? What are the signs to say, actually, this is stress, and I need to deal with stress rather than just struggling with time or whatever? Or what point to stop that affecting the health? What would you say are the top points of, you might be stressed is?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things to look at there. One is the more serious side of the effects of stress, and the research has shown now that stress can cause very, very serious illnesses such as heart disease, cancer, other things like weight gain. They've even said that stress can contribute to lowering your life expectancy. So you're not going to live as long if you're stressed. It's that serious. So there's some of the serious things to look out for. In terms of personal triggers, and I go through this in my course, I actually teach people how to identify their own personal stress strategy, because most people aren't aware of this, but we all have an individual stress strategy. So we all run stress differently. So once you understand what your stress strategy is, or how you have a stress response in your body, then you can be a lot more aware of that, and then you can actually start implementing some of the tips like the ones I mentioned earlier. But I'll just share with you a couple of common ones now. Stress does affect the body, so things to look out for are breathing. So most people they'll either have a faster heart rate if they're in a period of stress, or a lot of people hold their breath entirely. So they'll actually stop breathing for quite long periods of time. Other things, tightness in the shoulders, that's very key. Tightness in the chest.
Just as you said that, I was like, oh, my time.
Wriggle that out. Butterflies in the tummy, that's quite a key one. What else? They're probably the major ones. Tightness in the chest, very fast heart rate, and then shoulders and butterflies, they're probably the key ones. But once you start noticing what your particular things are, some people might clasp their hands together. It's usually very constrictive rather than expansive body behaviour. But once you figure out what that is, I'm not stressed. once you figure out what they are, then you can start.
That's really interesting. When you're saying about that, it's been proven that stress can one of the results of stress is that you can lower your life expectancy, and yet so that's to do with your life as a whole, and yet in the here and now you're also wasting your time. So you're wasting your life expectancy, but you're also wasting your time now by worrying about things that may not happen. So it's the quality of life now and the actual length of your life.
Yeah.
Stressing about things that might not even happen. What are we doing?
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, that's really good. So the work that you do, share with us the work that you do. How can the audience find you? What will they get out of it? Tell us more about your course, because we want to be stress-free, Zoe.
So I've got an online course which is called the Less Stress course, and that takes you through a lot of the processes that I started to talk about today. So there's actually a 5-step model that I've developed to interrupt your stress patterns. It also goes through a process that helps you identify what your personal stress triggers are, so what we just mentioned earlier. And there's a lot of research in there as well about what stress actually does to the body, the fight and flight response, and a lot of exercises to actually get you understanding how to combat your own stress levels. So that's actually in a workbook format. There's a full audio program and a couple of bonuses there as well. There's an extra section which deals with how to interrupt patterns. So that's all about looking at those times when you just feel stressed for no reason. So with that section, we look at developing your own happiness chart, and we look at what things actually make you happy and how you can interrupt those unexplained stress patterns. And then there's also a couple of bonuses, as I mentioned. So there's a ebook from Laurie Deschen, who is the founder of Tiny Buddha. She's got an ebook about mindfulness, which comes along with the package, as well as an exclusive interview with Eugene Tan, who's the founder of Aquabumps, which is a very successful surf lifestyle business, and he shares his personal strategies for dealing with stress when starting a business. So there's a lot.
So in terms of the course, it sounds like even though it's an online course, it's very individualised to you, your situation, which is great because a lot of online courses are just generic. So you really do work with the individual to see change in their life.
That's right. Yeah. I find that you get much stronger results, and I'm really excited about this course because everyone who's tried it has lowered their stress levels. Like every single person, I get feedback from everyone, and so it's really exciting to know that it works.
So that website, that web link.
Yeah, so you can find out more about that on my website, simplelifestrategies.com.
So yes, I would encourage all the viewers to head over to simplelifestrategies.com. I've worked with Zoe, her work is brilliant, and I'm sure you're open to people emailing you that might relate to some of your story, and you can engage with you at that level. Is that cool?
Of course, yeah, please let me know your story.
So you've given lots of advice here, lots of fantastic advice. What is the one thing right now, if somebody's watching this, really kind of stressed, they might have even, known that they've got demand, they might have even just clicked on a Facebook link whilst they're still meeting their deadline. What's that one thing they could do right now to turn their stress levels down in this moment?
I think it's just to be aware that whatever you're thinking about doesn't exist. It's not happening right now. So just focus on what you're doing and take action, and stress doesn't exist. It's all in the mind. Once you get that, it's you don't bother being stressed anymore.
And it sounds so simple, but it is simple.
Yeah.
But it's simply powerful, right? Once you've understood that truth and apply it to every area of your life, then there's no need for stress to exist. How would our lives be like? What would the viewers? What would your life be like if you were not living in stress? How much more could you do? And I love the way, to bring it back around, you said at the beginning about how we kind of all exist for something. We've all got a dream. We've all got something to do. Yeah. If we live stress-free, just purely working towards that dream, that vision, that goal, whatever it is that we're here to do, then that outcome would be so much more powerful. We'd be able to do bigger things, better things, have more impact in that sort of desire that we have. So it is with the key to that success really is to live stress-free and just live in the enjoyment of living on planet Earth and do whatever it is you're here to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Life is not supposed to be stressful, you know. Life is supposed to be fun. I want people to fall in love with their lives. I don't want them to be stressed. I want them to be in love with their lives.
That's awesome. Zoe, thank you for joining us again at simplelifestrategies.com. Thank you so much for being the first person on Life Change TV.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. So we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Join us next week for the next instalment of Life Change TV, where we'll be talking to more amazing people with amazing stories to share with you tips on how you can change your life. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Done. So that was